islands of Greece,
Oh.
ancient Greece.
Wow.
Ancient Buddhist sculpture. So think about the philosophical needs and desires of a Buddhist culture, right? Things like simplicity, lightness. These are important qualities, and I think there's something in this sculpture, or in these two sculptures, that creates a sense of lightness, simplicity. So and again, it is again a reduction. There are some things that are more naturalistic, like for instance this mouth. It has a lot to do with the complexity of a real mouth. In fact, people working from the model will tell you how many times have come around and suggested that they push the back of the lips back in space to create this sense that these lips are wrapping around the teeth of the mouth. You know, but that the particular nature of that dimple there, the way it just sinks back in this form here, it creates this sort of delicate smile in the expression of the face. The relative uninterrupted nature of the surface. There are some places where there's abrupt shifts, like right here. This is a ridge rather than an undulating surface. This ridge here, look at how pristinely even-keeled and continuous that ridge is, and then, as importantly, the way that ridge gradually dives into the pregnant form of out here. It transitions in a sort of seamless, quiet way rather than an abrupt way.
That ridge is what some of us were doing on our sculpture.
Well, except a lot of people were actually putting an indentation on either side. Instead of just two planes coming together at a ridge, they're actually kind of squeezing them out. That's why I said they're like duck lips, you know. And so Vicky's referring to the fact that a lot of people working from the model were inclined to make a hard edge there, and I bugged them about it for the 4 days we were working from the model, because I wanted them to see the actuality on the model's head in front of us, which is to realize that there is something more rounded about the brow. It's not a hard edge. Sumerian sculptures. Proportions. Here you go, Marilyn. There's proportions, right? The relative proportion of these things relative to this outline there. The relative flatness. The shape of the eye, which, you know, leans more towards the shape of a circle rather than the more conventional almond shape. It adds to that intensity of that gaze. Angularity. These sculptures are angular versus, I don't know how you want to call it. Curvilinear, soft, continuous, uninterrupted, angular.
What's the material?
These are stone.
What year is this from?
Sumerians, 5,000 years BC, 6,000 years BC. So even though this is out of bounds as far as the head goes, but we're, still the straightness of that, the stiffness, the tautness, the rigidity of these edges and these axes. A couple African sculptures. This vocabulary here is very similar to the Buddhist sculpture through here, right? There's a ridge, there's a concavity that is very long and that transitions into this connection down here. A concave form that culminates on a ridge that is the edge of this convex form here. And the convex form dives down between the two and becomes a ridge. And in the concavity, placed in a very specific distance from here, and a very close distance through here, are these cowrie shells, right? Which have, so the size of them, the placement, look at the length through here. The reason I chose these three slides is because, or these three images, is because there's something about this, in terms of movement, there's a dropping through here. Through here, there's a lift for me. Maybe a little scoop through here, but lift. And through here, there's a sort of expansion side to side that I feel in these particular forms. So there's, forms can have a directional aspect to them. Up, down, left, right, forward, back, balanced, imbalanced. Here's that Chinese sculpture again. Right, so angularity, severity, the verticality through here, right? This is a representation of a warrior. And there's something about eliminating the sense that the neck usually, naturalistically, projects the head forward, and that the mouth, the facial skeleton, where the mouth and the nasal bones are, projects forward in space. Here, it's more cylindrical, and that verticality, I think, adds to the severity and the intensity and the assertiveness of the head. We're going to take a little jaunt into some more contemporary sculpture. This is a sculpture by Mark Quinn where he's taken a mold off of his own head, right, using high-tech 21st century mold-making techniques. So it gets all the little details of his head. And he's cast his head in blood. Oh. And it's preserved in this sort of, in some sort of, what do you call it, dry ice container to maintain the solidity of the blood. So the material becomes the essential active ingredient. Here's another guy who's really cool. You see his stuff buzzing around Facebook all the time. Li Hongbo. He makes these sculptures out of paper strips of paper that are put together in an accordion fashion, so he can pick the thing up, and when it comes back together, it is the literalistic representation of the person whose head he scanned with a computer. And then he used a 3D printer to print the thing, but it's all layers of paper, so he can do this sort of accordion thing. So the high tech, the like cool materials and awesome techniques is the active ingredients. It's kind of like like
Tony Craig.
Well, yeah. Here he is again, and here again, he's using the very cool technique of 3D computer animation to scan probably his own head into the computer, and then just twist it on one axis, and then print it out, and there's a sculpture. So the asymmetry and the movement or the spiral of the symmetry of the face is what is the active ingredient. And then also we have to consider these striations here, I suppose. Here's another contemporary fellow, Richard Dupont, who, in a sense, lets all the air out of the thing. These are, again, very thin molds that he takes a very thin mold off of someone's head, so you see the form underneath, and then he pins the mold to the wall, and it hangs in a certain way. So this is more conceptual. The active ingredient is actually the conceptual bent of taking a mold and not making a positive, just pinning the flaccid thing on the wall. Here from the Meadows Museum is the Jaume Plensa sculpture. Again, it's reliant on high-tech computer programs and stuff, which is essentially how the thing is made. But the active ingredients here, forgetting about that technological stuff, It's the translucency. It's the way light interacts with this thing. It's the scale of the thing. You know, we would be about as tall as the middle of the ear on this sculpture, or maybe up to the eyes. Right? So the scale, the translucency, the idea of the grid in relationship to the head. Here are some more Plensa sculptures that you might have seen at the Nasher Museum. And here he again took the computer, scanned someone's head, and then slightly stretched it along the x-axis, and then had computer-driven stone carving machines carve the thing, and that's the sculpture. So without passing judgments on this use of technology, I want you to acknowledge that the techniques themselves create some of the active ingredients. So the sculptures that are made using computers, they have certain qualities that are different from sculptures that are made using hands. Here's a Ron Mueck sculpture, right? The active ingredient is the scale, but also the special effects of it all, the sort of circus of the fact that you look at this thing and you see little pores and little hairs inserted into the surface, and the coloration is incredibly detailed and literalistic.
What was the scale of the woman in the original?
Life size.
Okay.
What's that made from?
Plastics and resins and acrylics and I don't know, things like that. And then there's a different type of materiality. You know, Rodin is celebrated for his embracing of materiality. In fact, some people in my drawing class today were looking at his drawings, and we realized just how much he embraced the materiality of his drawing materials. So clay, he worked with clay, and so clay, you just want to drag your finger through here and emphasize the hollow up around that eye, which gives you an emphasis to the darkness that is up in that cavern. So the bumps and hollows become exaggerated, deeper hollows, and therefore stronger bumps, and therefore more color dancing around the surface. Look at the color on there.